Last year I was sitting at a desk as a sales manager, and now I'm official McLaren F1 simulated test driver.
Magnussen is 1.4 behind.
This opportunity is huge.
That's it, 46.1. That's faster than the factory McLaren driver, and he's done 6 laps.
Let's go race.
Motor racing is full of compromises, especially with these Williams FW31s where you have to find a balance between fuel load and lap times, when to be aggressive in the race versus your tyre wear, and when we come to Suzuka, you've got to compromise with your setup between these high speeds and tricky turns. Hello everyone and welcome to Japan for round 3 of the Batteries Not Included Championship. I'm Samuel Ryman and alongside me in the booth is Stefan Schlacker. Behind the scenes doing all of the button pushing is our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using camera sets provided by Dougie Beard. Stefan, we've been to Silverstone, the Nürburgring, and now we're here at Suzuka, which, while it may not have been around as long as the other 2 tracks, it has certainly seen its fair share of racing history through the years.
Yes, indeed, this 5.8 kilometer, 3.6 mile track designed by John Hogenholtz and finished in 1962, holding its first Formula 1 Grand Prix in 1987. This mostly unchanged 17-turn circuit is one of the toughest that you can find on this spinning ball of dirt. Saying mostly unchanged means it actually got changed 4 times. Strangely enough, different sections were made faster twice, such as the S's going up the hill. Because this circuit has everything you want from a racetrack, it is loved by race fans around the globe. And the history, as you say, the joy that is the history of this place. Obviously, the biggest moment of them all is the 1987 Grand Prix won by Gerhard Berger. What a race that was. I'm just messing with you. Obviously, it's the infamous rivalry taking place 3 times here between Senna and Prost in 87, 89 and 90. All 3 races being both high and lows of the sport at the same time. But that's enough about the history of this place. Let's find out how it feels to drive this 9-year-old FW31 around Suzuka, as it's time for the one, the only Joe Peak with our GSRC lap guide.
Alright, we've got Clayton McLeod in the GSRC Williams, so let's do a lap around Suzuka. You won't be braking until you're well into turn 1, which bleeds directly into 2. That'll make passes into here somewhat difficult, if risky. Drivers will need to assess if it's worth getting chopped off when the car ahead didn't think that you were that foolhardy. After that, you're taken immediately into the S's, which requires very little in the way of brakes, but a whole lot of throttle modulation. Staying online and close to the car ahead will be a big challenge due to the aero wake. Finally, once you come out of there into Dunlop, you'll drift the car across the track and steel yourself for Degner 1. It takes supreme commitment to take it in here as fast as you can, and before you know it, you're braking hard for Degner 2, so a planted car will be critical. After going under the bridge, you've got the hairpin, which is a good opportunity to overtake. Just be careful that your opponent doesn't surprise you with a very late defense, because you'll probably run into each other. Gently finding the power to prevent wheel spin, the car now flies along towards Spoon. Shortening the run around this long sweeping right-hander is more important than trying not to scrub off speed. Plus, it sets you up for the braking into Spoon itself. Passes here are possible, but very tough. Honestly, setting up the exit is probably the wiser choice, because using the draft and a good launch will make it easier to pass on the backstretch. Unfortunately, it may wind up placing you in a game of chicken into 130R. While it's easily flat out in the Williams, it's still kind of sketchy to go through here too wide. If you can stay close to the car ahead, you get another chance to chuck it up the inside of the Casio triangle. But remember, you're traveling at a high rate of knots, so you could wind up locking up the brakes and overshooting it. Once again, a sensitive right foot will come in handy as you accelerate onto the front stretch. But hopefully, you've kept it all together and have now finished a lap around Suzuka.
So that's what a lap around the Suzuka course is like when there aren't incidents over in the Casio Triangle or down in Turn 1 between championship contenders. Speaking of championship contenders, let's take a look at our own, even though the title won't be decided today though, because it's only round 3 of this 12-round season, and with 4 drop weeks coming into play, for all we know, absolutely none of the points that we've seen scored yet might be counting by the end of the year. But if they are, it's our Canadian friend Clayton McLeod up there with an 11-point lead over Adam Tremlewski, who picked off the win at Nürburgring that moved him up 2 spots in the standings. Ian Nash and Alejandro Del Campo likewise moved up 2 positions. And one driver just dropping back a little bit is Tommy Mikael Unhola, but he's still rounding out the top 5. Now, the way the points are scored is based on, even though this isn't an official iRacing series race, they calculate the strength of field along with the number of drivers at the end of each race and award them the points based on what iRacing would give them as if it was an iRacing official series race. And so that means the points could be different from round to round. The good news for our championship driver, Stefan, is we have seen pretty solid fields at all 3 races so far to open the season. Once again, it looks like about another 23-24 car field here today at Suzuka.
Yeah, and it's only great for us because we will see battles all over the track. But coming to the race details here, as you've already said, we're here on the 3rd week of this 12-round long season, so we even have a similar season length like you have in official iRacing. Drop weeks, we've got 4 of them, quite generous if you ask me, but it will make for a close and fiercely fought out championship. The race length today will be 35 laps, and you'll have to stop at least once here because we will have a fuel load restriction of 67%. So that's a thing to keep in mind. When do you want to make your stop here? Because it will mean a lot to your strategy. This series does not feature incident count nor penalty punch, which is a rare sight to see nowadays in league racing on iRacing. But those guys can work it out, and it surely doesn't hurt the racing that we will see. The car driven today and throughout the season will be the Williams Toyota Frank Williams 31, a 740 brake horsepower, 2.4 liter V8, a 7-speed gearbox, going up to the famous 18,000 RPM limit, which gives us this glorious sound of this car. Last but not least, as Sam has already noted, the point system used in this series reflects the official iRacing point structure.
Now, so practice is over. Qualifying has started. A fairly long lap around this Suzuka course, so no times clicked in just yet. But these drivers have 10 minutes to get out there on the track. They're all sharing the racetrack together, but there's plenty of space out there and plenty of time to try and get your hot lap in. Our fastest drive in practice was by Joseph Fabian, who performed well over at Silverstone. We didn't see him last race at Nürburgring. He was the only driver to go sub 130.
Yes, and it will be interesting to see who else can go below that sub 130 time limit here, as Joseph Fabian, I'm currently on him, has a big wibble out of the last turn here. And one thing you have to keep in mind, some of these corners here are off camera and they can really hurt you when you get it wrong.
Trying to find out who our first drive is on the hot lap. It looks like it is Floris Bichard, who's just worked his way out of 130R. He was pretty much in the middle of a field in practice. Let's see what he can turn across the line to get us started off in qualifying. 132 was his practice. Boy, a 131! So he was sandbagging.
Yes, he improved quite a lot there, and Stefan Henkel only improving 6/10 on his lap time, which is interesting. Antonio Ortiz is just a 10th slower than his practice time, so he was most definitely on a qualifying run there on his lap time.
And one thing that's perhaps making these qualifying times so strong, at least from what we've seen so far, Stefan, is the fact that the track is pretty much an ideal temperature. Not too cold, not too hot, so hopefully we won't see a whole lot of sliding around and incidents to start this race. And there you get an idea of what we're looking at here conditions-wise. None of those numbers really jumping out, Stefan. It looks like a nice track to be out there on.
No, it's really nice. It's a perfect Saturday evening drive here at Suzuka. Not too warm, not too cold. It has the perfect grip for you with that 31 degrees Celsius track temperature, or 87 Fahrenheit, as you can see on the overlay. We have winds north 3 kilometers an hour, so no issue at all there. But yeah, it's, as you said, perfect conditions here for the cars. You will not have to worry too much about saving your tires because the track isn't that hot.
Yeah, the track getting a little bit warmer though, of course, as all these Williams FW31s blast around the place, putting heat down on the circuit. Joseph Fabian has jumped up to our fastest driver so far, with Clayton McLeod out there in second place. Never too early to start talking about strategy for this race, Stefan, and Clayton, who has been one of our top performers, obviously being the championship leader at the first opening couple of rounds, his strategy has been to go long in the first stint, start the race with a heavy fuel load. It costs him off the line, but it really helps him pull off an overcut, if you will, in the middle of a race once everyone else has came into the pits.
It really is an overcut if you think about it. Everyone else goes for the normal strategy, either splitting or going in early. But the thing is, you can catch traffic that way. And if you're overcutting everyone else, you will be one of the last cars to pit. So you will only have to deal with blue flag situations and not have to try and overtake someone after you have pitted and are much more heavier than the car in front of you.
We have some fairly loyal viewers here on the Global SimRacing Channel, so maybe some of our F1 fans who also watch our oval racing broadcasts might recognise the drive of a 42 out on track right now. This is Gabe Wood. We'll catch up with him as he's working his way through Casio, about to turn a lap. We knew he was good at oval racing. I didn't know he'd ever got behind the wheel of one of these F1 cars before, but as he crosses the line, he actually hasn't turned in a clean qualifying lap yet. But his practice time was very good, and I'm really curious to see how Wood will be able to perform during the race today.
Yeah, quite interestingly enough, both his last lap times were both invalid. But if we are speaking here about someone cross-joining into this league right now, we also have to talk about someone who is really big in the open wheel scene, and that is Robert Grosser, obviously hosting the Classic IndyCar Series for, I think it's now the 5th or 6th year in a row that he's hosting that series. And yeah, we have a bunch of different names coming in here into this series, because let's face it, it's a great series to race in.
And we're keeping an eye on Wood as he works his way through this lap. I don't think I've really seen any mistakes out of him this time around, so hopefully he'll be able to turn a clean lap this time by. Joseph Fabian, by the way, has since improved on his provisional pole sitting time. He's ran the 1:30.0 now, still almost a second faster than any other of his competitors. Oh, Wood overshoots Casio a little bit. It's going to cost...
Oh!
Uh-oh, he's going to be starting from the back now. And as we catch up, whoa, that's not going to help Fabian improve his time. There's a couple of new paint schemes I've noticed out here today while we've been watching these drivers go around in practice, Stefan. One of them is quite interesting, the driver we became familiar with, the number 16 of Christoph Buzzy. He is running the Parmalee paint scheme that Nelson Piquet had on his Brabham, winning the 1981 Formula One World Championship.
Yeah, and strangely enough, it looks like this livery was made for this car. Just look at it, just nice, clean, and just awesome to look at.
There's also another driver, I think he was sitting in the pits last time I saw him, but Fabiano Lima, he's sitting in his pit stall right now, 17th on the grid in the 88 car, running a 2000s McLaren livery that Lewis Hamilton used to run. Meanwhile, though, we're watching Buzzy work his way around Casio. 132.2, his best time so far. He jumps up a couple attempts, moves him up a position.
And one thing we have to talk about, and it is a big point here, it is the starting grid because of that turn 1 and 2 combination. You really have to get up there in qualifying to do anything into turn 1 and 2 and to maybe even get away from any possible incidents that will happen in the back of this field. So really getting up there into the top 10, top 5 is a big target for everyone here in this series, in this qualifying right now.
Right, here comes Overbay out of the last turn. He's had a pretty decent lap. It jumps him up several positions. And right before the checkered flag flies, so he's going to call it done. And McLeod is calling it done. That pretty much solidifies a pole sitting position, I think, to Joseph Fabian. But we still have some drivers out there on track. Antonio Ortiz Poveda is currently 4th on the grid. He'll have enough time to bring that number 17 car around, see if he can jump up onto the front row.
Oh, Fabian, another 10th down now to a 29.9 on his last attempt there. So he now is 8/10 in front of everyone else with that last lap time he put in. But Antonio now coming into the infamous 130R. Let's see what he can do into the Casio chicane. Nice and early on the brakes, left and right, or other way around, sorry. Out of the last turn, let's see what he can do crossing the finish line with a 130.9. Third place for Antonio right there.
Jumps him up to third. What can Wood do as he finally got in a clean lap right at the time of asking? Yes, he has. It puts him 5th on the grid. That's better than 22nd.
Much better than 22nd, as he also does a practice start right after his qualifying lap with a lot of wheel spin, nearly losing his car there.
Hey, he's got time to practice another one. He's not going to do it, though. All right. That is all the cars off the track. We still got a couple minutes before the cars get gridded up, but we can show you the order that they'll be gridding up, with Joseph Fabian and Clayton McLeod lined up there on row 1 of the grid. Right behind them will be Antonio Poveda and Floris Bichar on row number 2. The aforeseen Gabriel Wood will be starting from 5th position ahead of Ian Ash, definitely one of our stronger competitors early on this season. Tommy Unhola, you probably just saw him on the GSRC over in the Lotus 49 World Cup. He'll be starting 7th ahead of Michael Overbay. Clemens Model will be starting from 9th place ahead of Robert Grosser. Top 10 covered by 1.8 seconds.
Just barely missing out on that top 10 spot. Jakub Kaczewicz starts in route, 6 in 11th position. Stefan Henkel in 12th. Christoph Bussi in 13th. Quite a low for him, if I remember right, of his last performances. Daniel Lechner is in 14th. 15th is rounded out by Dave Peterson, Reed Miller, Kevin Mills, Fabio Limer, Alejandro Del Campo, and Taylor Lane round out the top 20 in this field.
And then rounded out the field, we got Jerry Folko, Larry Krupp and Silvio Hurt, who was the only driver who did not turn a lap in qualifying, but they are in the session. So we have a 23-car field about to race for 35 laps here at Suzuka, and they are all gridded up. The lights are about to come up, and Joseph Fabian on the outside and Clayton McLeod on the inside will lead them down to the first corner as they get them revved up for racing. Here's Suzuka. The lights are off and away they go. Nice start by both drivers on row one. Already 3 abreast back there, back about 4th place. Fabian's going to have the track all to himself in turn 1. Around the outside goes Bischoff.
Oh, who is that?
Crash at the back.
Clemens
on
Model.
second.
Very on fire, and another one up the SS. Oh,
Fuzzy
boy.
and Del Campo.
Well,
it's very
things are... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, very unfortunate for some of our bigger names who were starting in the middle of the field, getting called out there early on.
Yeah, quite a hectic start, and as another one spins out of Deck 2, that's Antonio Ortiz Poveda. Missing everything, so he can continue on, but a very hectic start there. I did not really expect it, as Joseph Fabian is already quite a lot ahead of Clayton McLeod, really putting the foot on the pedal there and smashing it down to the middle in that first lap.
Yeah, this could be different strategies here, Stefan. We've seen this out of Clayton McLeod, both races so far this season. He likes to start the race with a heavy fuel load. I wouldn't be surprised if he's done that again, to which it must be said, it's really good news for him that he's been able to hold on to second. But hey, as he goes off, and lots of drivers going off as they enter Casio. Gabe Wood losing a couple of positions.
The hectic part of this first lap is still not over, or rather we have to say the laps now, since we're already on lap 2. But yeah, people are still trying to find their rhythm, which is kind of strange to see in cars like this.
So our front 2 rows at the start of the race were Fabian and McLeod. They stayed there. Up into third from 4th on the grid went Floris Bichar. He really ran it down hard into the first turn. I think he's got a light fuel load because he is being very aggressive all over the back of McLeod here early on, and it will be interesting seeing if that 41 car can move up into second place. The other driver who did not get off to a great start at all, of course, you called it, Stefan, Antonio Poveda, who started 3rd place. He dropped back a position or 2 at the start anyway, but then he had a mistake that put him all the way back down in the middle of the field right now.
Better have a mistake in the first lap than on the last lap. That's always... Just get that mistake out on the first lap and you're good to go for the rest of the field. But talking about Floris, I'm thinking that he is also running a relatively low fuel load, as Joseph is, compared to Clayton McLeod here. And if he does, he needs to get past Clayton and run after Joseph. Otherwise, he will not be able to fight for this win at the end of the race.
Overbay was attempting to pass on Wood for 7th place, I think that was. He threw it in the Casio a bit too deep. Overbay goes for a slide, recovers, but not before losing a bunch of positions.
As he immediately gets under attack from Kevin Mills. Side by side, going down the front stretch, into turn 1, who breaks later. It's Kevin Mills taking over another spot from Michael Overbay, sliding him down into 14th now.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Wasn't exactly the qualifying. It wasn't exactly the qualifying position we expected from Overbay back in 8th place. He was looked to be making a bit of ground early on, but that mistake going to cost him some spots.
Yeah, he is, as of right now, taking out of account all the people that spun or were involved in the crash in lap 1. He is the biggest loser of this first 3 laps right now. So he really is having the wrong set of gears on his car right now.
Alright, so we'll run down the top 10 for you. It is Joseph Fabian currently leading them around, already 2.5 seconds over Clayton McLeod, who's got Floris Bichar right on the back of him. And actually, let's keep half an eye on this because they're coming up to that good passing opportunity here. Casio is
he's trying for it.
Here he goes.
And he has to back off. He hit the curb there. That's never a good idea in this car. Way too high. So he has to back off. And let's see if he can do something into turn 1. But I think he's too far back for that.
Right behind them, Tommy Unhola runs in 4th place. Yet another good start off of a grid from him. He got one also at the Nürburgring. This time he started 7th. He's up to 4th. Ian Ash. And now he's
speaking
not.
of him. Oh, boy. Throwing everything away right here. Barely missing the inside wall there. But he is losing 6 positions, as I think, if I heard right, we're going into the replay to see what happened there for him.
What happened is he heard that we were giving him a shout out on GSRC and he got a little bit too overexcited on the throttle coming out of turn 2.
As we were on board there with
Ian Ash.
Just seeing this stranded Tommy as we're going back live again here on this race. The thing now is for Tommy, he is now inside a 4-car pack, so that will really hurt him now, instead of being up there with everyone else.
Flores has got to try and find a way by Clayton, because Clayton is losing a second a lap to Joseph Fabian right now.
Yeah, and it really seems like that Flores can go faster here at the beginning of this race. So sometimes you have to take risks, and I think it's time for that for Flores to just take a risk and try to do quite a brave overtake maneuver on Clayton, as it seems like he has the upper hand, especially out of turns on Flores. So he really has to do something into turns to be able to overtake Clayton here.
Side-by-side battle for 10th place, entering the first corner. This is between Unhola, as he's trying to recover from his mistake, and Poveda is also trying to recover from his mistake. Both these drivers have been up in the top 5 early on, but since things have gone downhill, they are now running 10th position and 11th position, back there behind Daniel Lurchner, who has been one of our bigger movers of the opening stages here. Lurchner in that Rotham's Williams paint scheme, running in 9th place after starting 14th.
Yes, and as it seems, Unhola is kind of angered about his own mistake right there and has already overtaken both Poveda and Peterson, because they both were in front of him after he rejoined the track. So he is really on fire right now, and I don't think it will take long until he can get past Daniel Lechner here.
As we watch Poveda just running around there in 11th, let's jump back up front, because here come McLeod and Bichner back out to the front straight. And it's almost like Flores is content just to ride there for now, to be honest, Stefan, but he shouldn't be. I mean, I'm sure he's got more patience.
Yeah, it seems like he suddenly is okay with staying behind Clayton. So maybe he has a second strategy for exactly this moment here as Clayton. Oh, that was close.
I'm sorry, trouble for Gabe Wood. He just took 6th place from Jacob Karsowicz and then lit it up coming out of turn 2, much like what we saw in Hola do a couple of laps ago. We'll catch a replay here, because this was a costly one for Gabe Wood. It drops him from 6th all the way back to 13th.
Yes, indeed. He even touched the wall there. So he's really lucky that he has still his front wing attached to his car after just, as you can see on the replay, just mashing the throttle a bit too hard, spinning into the wall.
As we come back to live action, Stephen Henkel, who had been riding in the top 10, has also had a bit of a moment. That's now dropped him all the way back to 17th. So unfortunate for the driver of the 102. He'd had a fairly calm opening to the race, but as we hit lap number 6, things go a little bit south for him, but able to continue. A lot of these drivers, even though we've seen some slides early on, Stefan, they're all able to continue. Only 3 DNFs so far: Jerry Forkolb, Reed Miller and Taylor Lane.
Yes, and I have to say, very unlikely for this series and the first 2 races so far that we have seen so many mistakes on the opening laps of this race. So you can really see how tough this track is on these drivers, because you have to be on point every single lap, otherwise it's gonna punish you and put you into the grass.
Oh, another car off as they exit out turn 2 there. Boy, that really seems to be the trouble zone early on during the race. Think that might have been Buzzy.
I think you're right on that. Now, we have to talk about this. Why turn 2? Why does everyone make mistakes right there? It has a unique feature. It is a very high bank turn, and then suddenly you just drop out of it. And there, people get overconfident on their car, smash in the throttle, and then suddenly they lose that grip because they don't have the banking anymore supporting them, and then they just loop it around because their car can't hold that power on the rear wheels anymore.
So we mentioned him a little while ago as we got this nice battle for 10th actually going on screen right now. Let's keep an eye and see how this goes down in 130R. Actually for 11th place, Clemens Modal working his way down the inside of Fabiano Lima. Not much of a fight, to be honest. Modal able to pick off that position. Nice job, by the way, by Lima so far. He qualified all the way back in 18th. Now, even though he lost a position there, he's still riding in 12th. So, a couple cars in the pits, but I think those are Peterson and Mills. These are definitely unscheduled stops. They've been running towards the back. In fact, Mills just pulls out of a race.
Yeah, both cars looked a bit bent up there on the front, so probably they've seen the barrier somewhere on the track here. But we still have the battle between Clayton and Flores in second, and suddenly Flores dropped off a little bit of Clayton, so maybe he even attacked a bit too much and has taken a bit too much life out of his tires. Because he really is struggling suddenly for grip out of turns, and Clayton is easily pulling away from him out of every single acceleration zone there is.
So, we've documented that Unhola, Wood, and Preveda are all strong runners who started this race with a couple of unfortunate mistakes. 2 drivers have been able to capitalize on that. They're running 5th and 6th right now. That's Robert Grosser running in 5th place. He started 10th. The driver who started behind him on the grid, Jacob Karsowicz, he started 11th. He's racing that Toro Rosso livery out there, currently holding down 6th place as we work lap number 9 of 35.
It is all about consistency here at Suzuka. You're not allowed to make any mistakes or this track will punish you, as we've already mentioned a couple of times here. And Robo Grosser and Jakob are just sitting there going, hey guys, make your mistakes, we're gonna capitalize and just drive by you. And that's exactly what they're doing so far, staying clean, staying out of trouble, and just putting in their laps.
Trouble for Ian Nash. He'd been running in 4th. He has a spin coming out of a hairpin, drops him back to 6th.
It actually started already into the turn with him locking up the rear brakes. I don't know if we will have that on our replay or not.
Yeah, looks like we got it right here coming up as he works. This is a replay of him working his way out of Degner up the top of a hill here. Another turn where, well, like you mentioned, he got it wrong on entry and was never really able to fully recover it.
No, because of that hot tires of that near spin into the hairpin, he just laid it up too much out of it and looped it around.
And the 2 drivers who were able to capitalize were the 2 drivers we were just talking about, Grosser and Karshewicz, now running in 4th and 5th respectively. Ian Asho still running in 6th. He enters this race 3rd in the points, And even a 6th place finish right now would be another consistent finish that would help him out there, because I think he rolls into this race off of a 5th at Silverstone and a 3rd at the Nürburgring.
With drop weeks in place, you can allow yourself to not be all that consistent, but still consistency is still a very, very big part, even though you have those drop weeks, because hey, if you're up there all the time, you are gonna generate more points. So be up there, be consistent, and forget about your drop weeks and just put in your performance that you can do all day long.
One thing that I'm, as a driver, when I'm competing in series on iRacing, Stefan, when drop weeks come into play, I found it's still so much more valuable to be at every single race, even if it's not a track that you're necessarily good at. And I'm sorry, Lima in trouble here on camera. He's able to recover it. But the point I want to try and make is, even when drop weeks come into effect, you want to be consistent. You want to show up. One driver who wasn't able to show up last week due to a work commitment was our current race leader, Joseph Fabian. And so he is, granted, he's only missed one race so far, but it does put him under a little bit more pressure to perform, knowing that one of his drop weeks is going to be a 0 anyway. You know, he's only got 3 drop weeks he can use. And here he is, he was 2nd at Silverstone, he's currently dominating this race here at Suzuka. He knows when he does show up, he's got to perform.
The thing is, drop weeks have already once decided the title in Formula 1, because let's not forget, Formula 1 once used drop weeks back in, if I remember right, 1989, I think that was, where Ayrton Senna won the World Championship because of drop weeks. So it still plays a very big part, even though you aren't consistent. You still can get quite far up the ladder here, but obviously you have to go around Clayton and Joseph, and that is a very hard part to do.
Yes, a scheduled stop for Lima. It said he was racing an old McLaren livery there, actually showing up on our broadcast. It's got the 2000 or 2001 Arrows paint scheme, lovely orange and black. That was actually the 88 championship Senna won due to drop weeks, Stefan, and you were close.
Hey, it still counts. I was close. But yeah, drop weeks, they are there to be used, but be there, be consistent, even though if, like I said, you hate that track, as there's someone troubled. Let's see who that is. Christoph Bussi.
Yeah, this is a bit puzzling though, Stefan. Lurchner in at the completion of lap number 11. These are scheduled stops. I've got to wonder if they're 2 stopping. Well, we're going to get a replay actually. He might have had a moment in the Casio. He was racing wheel to wheel with another car. There could have been contact there. Oh yeah, look at the front right of his front wing. It does look like it was tweaked a little bit.
Very interesting. I'm honestly puzzled right now. Like, I pretty much went into this race thinking it's gonna be a 1-stopper because how these cars perform on these tires, but maybe some people are opting for 2-stoppers. As of right now, we can't really say that yet because we are a third through the race and we don't know what fuel loads they have on board.
Oh,
so
that
it
was
still could be 1-stopper.
That was Grosser. Sorry, we just called this on screen, Stefan. Grosser, who was one of our drivers we were tooting as having a clean race so far, well, his clean race lasted 12 laps.
Yes, once again, a Thunderfoot did strike here and just looping it around out of the last turn. Not very great for Robert as he has picked up a lot of damage on his right front wing as he's getting overtaken now by Unhola because he does just simply not have enough grip in the turns to be up to speed through them.
Yeah, and lots of cars, strong cars, that being said, quite close on track right now. Unhola ahead of Grosser, ahead of Pavetta.
Oh!
Pavetta! Oh no! I'm sure they both got a bit of damage, but they're both able to continue.
Well, that really went from bad to worse for Robert Gross, as we have it once again on the screen for you guys. I don't know, it seemed like Robert did go for the defensive line here, just going a bit to the middle of the track. And Antonio wasn't 100% sure what he himself wanted to do. And it's one of those moments where, you know, I want to go, but I don't want to go. And he went for it and sadly hit Robert.
And another major accident on track. Alejandro Del Campo now sitting in his pit stall as we watch. Locking up on pit entry there was Pavetta. But Del Campo just had a major crash about 20-30 seconds ago in the number 6 machine. And that's unfortunate considering he had a fairly decent start to the season that saw him running 4th in the points.
Yes, it was a misunderstanding there between Clayton and Alejandro. Alejandro wanted to go to the inside there to let Clayton pass, and Clayton wanted to get every single inch of draft available, but Alejandro went off the throttle, which really you shouldn't do without notifying the car behind you, and Clayton just, sadly, with a lot of netcode on my end, he hit Alejandro and ended his day quite heavily.
Yeah, well, Clayton picked up damage. Now, this is going to be an interesting race for Clayton now, because we're sure he has a lot of fuel on board. He's been able to drop Flores. He's been able to pull away from the car behind him. But, I mean, for his strategy to pan out, he's got to continue just logging laps right now. And the 133.1 still, so it doesn't look like it's hurt him too much.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't see any damage, but it really depends how heavy his damage is. But as of right now, it doesn't seem all that big, because he's still, as you said, 33.1. So it will be interesting if he opts to stop this lap or next lap, or just continue on with his strategy, because it doesn't affect him all that much.
Currently approaching the halfway point of a race. It's starting to get that impression that even if a couple of our backmarker drivers have elected to turn this into a 2-stopper race or started the race with a light fuel load for whatever reason, most of our front runners are out there with enough fuel to turn this into a 1-stop as we're coming around to complete lap 15 of 35 this time by. Joseph Fabian continues to lead this race by over 15 seconds over Clayton McLeod, who might have gotten away without too much damage from that incident, running in 2nd place. Flores, as we mentioned, Flores Bichard back in 3rd place. Jacob Kasparix runs in 4th after capitalising on other drivers' mistakes. One driver who's made the mistake today has been Ian Ash, but he's still out there running in 5th, ahead of Tommy Unhola, Gabe Wood back in 7th. All of those drivers been involved in some kind of incident. Stefan Henkel, Michael Overbay, and Pavetta, who has made the pit stop, mind you, rounding out the top 10.
If I recall everything correctly, we right now have only the top 4 without a mistake right now, excluding the thing between Clayton and Alejandro. But what I find quite interesting is that Flores really struggles right now for pace, as he is right now nearly 5 seconds of Clayton. And even though he looked very strong in the beginning, he looks quite a lot like he struggles very hard in this middle section of the race.
Overbay comes in for a scheduled pit stop, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's roughly mid section of this race right now, so it's a perfect time to stop for fresh fuel and tires. As he is having a long stop there with the front section being up all along the time. So maybe he even had to change his front wing there.
Yeah, Overbay, here he is. He's exited the pits now. Gets out there without much traffic around. But also, I mean, first off, Stefan, if you do have damage, definitely take the time to repair it in one of these Formula One cars. But also, the fact that it's going to be naturally a long stop anyway if he wants to make it to the end of the race, just due to the fact that we still have over half a race left to go.
It is still a very long race to go. It was already quite a long race for these drivers because of how demanding this track is. So just going in halfway, splitting your stuff, and then it also refreshes yourself a little bit because you can bit relax down that long pit straight. So maybe these are also a bit of mind games for yourself to just relax for a short period of time, take your mind off this very demanding racetrack, and then go out again and attack with a refreshed mind.
Talking to you, how tricky the circuit was. You just saw Grosser going a lap down the Fabian there. Well, also with Overbay having just pit, we're only halfway through this sim, and there's only 9 cars left on the lead lap. Such was the pace that Joseph Fabian has had out there today.
Yeah, and 9th place ain't even that far ahead of Fabian anymore, just 1 minute and 20 behind him on track, which leaves about 20 seconds between Ortiz and Fabian to lap the 9th car right now on track.
Fabian putting on a master full performance right now. As I say that, it looks wide at Declan too. 131.6 was his last lap around. And now, let's not also forget that Fabian is a driver who's he's shot out of a cannon right at the start of a race, so we think he's got a bit of a lighter fuel load. I wouldn't be surprised if we see our race leader being forced to pit for fuel within the next couple of laps.
Yes, and I really do think it's once again one of those occasions where Fabian is the lighter fuel load of the two between Clayton and himself, and Clayton just opting once again to go just full fuel as much as he can put into this fuel tank, and then go as long as he can, stop for a short time, and then just get out of the gate blasting and trying to catch Joseph again.
Now, Fabian stays out for another lap, but we see Henkel, who has been one of our quieter performers, I would say, up there in the top 10, coming in for a stop. I would have called him a lead lap contender, but this pit stop puts him a lap down.
We right now, between all the cars that are still in the lead lap, we have one fight out there right now between Kacevic and Unhola for 4th position coming into the Kasi chicane right now, with Unhola being always 4 to... Oh! Whoa, that was close there for Kacevic going into the pit lane.
So, he reveals his hand. That's as far as he could go, was lap number 18. Right down the middle.
I have to say right here, I think Kacevic was actually forced by his mistake to pit here, because he was so sideways that with catching the car, he got forced into the pit lane by his own mistake there.
Yeah, sometimes it's a good way to come into the pits. Gabe Wood into the pits, as is Jacob. Of course, Jacob was just exiting the pits. That's right, my bad. So, Gabe
Yes.
Wood is our new drive into the pits.
Yes, Gabe would not really square into his pit lane, so that has most definitely hurt his pit time, as I think that was Fabian. No.
No, race leader stays out another lap. Maybe he has more fuel than I was giving him credit for. Now, one thing, even though we talk about the limited fuel load and how it creates, it's not so limited. Well, the drivers have to split it directly down the middle. They do have to play a bit of strategy, decide whether they want to start with a light fuel load or a heavy fuel load, and most of them normally opt to do the latter, to be honest. You don't have enough fuel to do the whole race. You do have to pit at some point to get to the end, so that's not Clayton's strategy.
Yes. Now, what our race director here, our camera director here confused me a little bit was it wasn't Joseph in, but Jakub Harcevic is leading the pit that have pitted so far for obvious reasons.
Jacob, trying to see when Ian Ash comes into the pits, he'll lose a spot to Jacob. Tommy and Hola will be interesting to see. I think that's the guy that Jacob has got to be racing right now. And shouldn't be much of a battle for second after pit stops are said and done, because McLeod currently has about 3 seconds over Flores. And wow, this is surprising. So of our 3 leaders, Clayton actually comes in first.
Yes, very interesting. Maybe it was due to the traffic he was facing right now, as he was going through quite a lot of cars in those laps so far. So maybe he was kind of forced by the traffic to come in here into the pits. But very interesting to see how long Joseph can go, as we only have 15 laps remaining in this race.
And of course, the longer they can go, the less fuel they have to put in their car when they come in. Oh, lovely crap! He just got a piece of the grass, running in 14th place as it came out of 130R. That is not a place where you want to lose it. Hard into the wall. Yeah, we'll watch this all unfold and replay, but when he rejoined the track, he came back on ahead of Pavetta, and they do make contact. So we're watching the build-up to his mistake here. Here's a run down the 130R. And you'll watch he clips the grass on exit and then tries to drive his car back to the pits, which honestly I don't think was ever on anyway, considering how hard he hit the wall. And as he does so, he collected the driver who was running in 7th, Pavetta.
Yes, and as we were watching the replay, also Joseph Fabian opted to go into pit lane. Being also a bit held up by this crash that happened in front of him. As he is exiting pit lane now. And Clayton McLeod still far away back on Fabian. Putting, actually, Floris Bieshauer is now the leader of this race. Very interesting how far he can go with this fuel load.
I can only imagine it's a couple more laps. But he won't have to take as much fuel as Clayton. So obviously I completely misread that strategy. It will be interesting seeing if Flores can turn a couple of hot laps in right now while he does have a light fuel load, and see how close he can be to that number 1 car once he serves his pit stop.
Yes, very interesting, and honestly, I did not expect something like this, that Fabian is gonna be able to just drive away like this and actually have the higher fuel load than Clayton McLeod. Like, that's a turn of events that nobody expected here.
Shows you the pace of that Australian driver, Joseph Fabian in the number 8 machine. Here comes Bieshauer into the pits. Where will he come out?
Yes, it will hopefully for us be very close between Clayton and Flores. I think there were 4 seconds between them before the pit stops. So let's see how Flores is going to be able to come out in respect to Clayton, as Clayton is already in the Casio chicane. Coming out of the last turn now. As Flores is driving away, but Clayton already steaming past him. And easy for Clayton to defend his second place there from Flores Bizarre.
But Flores will have slightly fresher tyres for the last 13 laps. We'll see if that's able to help him out. Unhola and Ash both into the pits.
There's Unhola coming out nowhere. Like quite literally in the middle of nowhere, as the next car is just crossing the start-finish line, which is Jakub Kraczewicz. But that now leaves us with a clean field, pit stop cleaned field, with Joseph Fabian leading everyone else by quite a lot. It's actually 21 seconds over Clayton McLeod.
Yeah, unfortunately, even though it's a field that has all served its pit stops, it's also a rather smaller field that has all served its pit stops. 9 cars officially out of the race right now. So we started with 23. I think that takes us down to 14. And actually 13 just running right now because Paveda's sitting in his pits with that damage. Good battle on track, shaping up for 9th place with Henkel in front of Lurchner.
Yes, indeed. Henkel trying to defend off Lerchner, but Lerchner is ever so slightly faster than Henkel throughout the last few laps. 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, shaving off Henkel in front of him as 2 very different lines there for Henkel and Lerchner through the hairpin.
Okay, so top 10 are all still running out there on the lead lap. Overbay, Hurt and Modal all running a lap down, and Paveda sitting in his pit stall. The drivers out of a race are Larry Krupp, Fabiano Lima, Alejandro Del Campo, Christoph Buzzy, Kevin Mills, Dave Peterson, Jerry Forekolb, Reed Miller and Taylor Lane.
Actually, I have to say this battle for 9th right now will get quite interesting in the next few laps, as Joseph Fabian is right behind them.
Now the good news for Fabian is he holds a 20-second lead, so it doesn't really matter how much lap traffic he takes. He can afford to bide his time, play it patient and not make an unforced error.
Also, one thing we have to add here, Antonio Ortiz Poveda just retired his car.
Which takes us down to 13 machines still out there. And the only one I don't think we've gave a shout out today has been Silvio Hurt, who didn't turn a lap in qualifying. They started from dead last on the grid and has just stayed out of trouble in their number 75 machine and is currently running 12th.
But he also had a spin down the front stretch at one point, so even he is not mistake free.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is. I think even Joseph Fabian has had a couple of off tracks today. He's just been able to recover them nicely.
As he has already passed Henkel, and that put Henkel right in the hands of Lerchner, but he is not able to attack him into the Casio chicane.
This being a battle for 9th for Fabian ahead, do the math there, that means we have 8 cars still left on the lead lap as we enter the final third of this race, and the battle for 9th definitely heating up on the run down the front straight here. Lurchner got a nice round, he's going to look to the inside in turn 1. Who's going to yield? It will have to be Henkel, but Lurchner may have thrown it in too deep.
But he is able to hold on to 9th here over Henkel. Very good pass. I think Henkel made it a bit easier on him into turn 1, not wanting to risk his car right there for a 9th position.
So Joseph Fabian, as we mentioned, now in front of these guys, he holds a 21-second lead. The battle for second could definitely be on. There's less than 2 seconds separating McLeod and Bichnar, and let's not forget that Bichnar has slightly newer tyres, and also was able to keep up with McLeod earlier, despite, against what we thought, he was able to do it having a heavier fuel load than the driver of a number one machine.
Now, the question remains, how well is Flores' car set up? Maybe his car is using too much tires in the beginning of the race and therefore he was dropping off. Or maybe it was just a bit too much or too less wing and he was able to correct it with his pit stop. So it will be interesting to see what Flores can do here in the last 10 laps of this race.
Good point you bring up there, Stefan, that these are open setups, so the drivers, not only can they adjust them in the pits, they can adjust a bunch of settings on their steering wheel while they're out there turning laps. These are the 2009 F1 cars and not exactly as high-tech as the modern-day McLaren MP430 that we now have here on iRacing, but there's still a lot of tools you can play around with to make your car go faster.
Yes, indeed, and the things you can adjust on your wheel, you can adjust a whole lot there and just fiddle around until you have something that suits your car right now on this corner or on the full track, and just tune it out, and you can spend hours just by clicking around on your wheel in this car.
Meanwhile, Fabian continuing to control the field out here. He's on lap number 27. That means he'll be coming to 8 laps left to go at the completion of this lap, which means about 12 more minutes of racing for these drivers.
One thing we have to say right now, which is quite interesting also, is that Stefan Henkel is kind of falling back on Lerchner, and really Overbay is closing in on Henkel lap for lap. Last lap around, I don't know what happened there, but he was 3 seconds faster than Overbay. This time around 5/10 faster than Henkel. So it ain't gonna take long until Overbay is there and for Henkel and challenge him for that last spot in the top 10.
Yeah, it makes you think Henkel must have definitely had a big error off camera a couple of laps ago that caused him to run that 1 minute 36, but whatever the case, Michael Overbay, who out-qualified Henkel by 4 positions, and, well, mind you, 4 positions, but he was only 0.2 of a second faster, such was the competitiveness of our qualifying session. He is running him down for 9th place in the closing laps here. Oh, sorry, for 10th.
You can also say he's running down 9th, but I don't think that he will have enough time to also run down Lerchner, as he is also 3, 4, 5/10 faster than Lerchner every single lap. But with Henkel in between him and Lerchner, I don't think that he has enough time and passing opportunities to pull off the 11th to 9th in this closing laps.
But that doesn't mean he can't try. The best thing he can do if he wants to take a fight to Daniel is to get by Stefan as quickly as possible, and they are coming up to Casio here. If not Casio, turn 1 is obviously a huge passing opportunity. They work their way through the triangle, which looks nothing like a triangle, but whatever. Here they go, down the front straight. Too far back.
He already tried it to take enough speed through 130R to make something happen into the Casio. As is getting close there, but he took too much speed and had to back out of the throttle at the end of 130R, so he was not able to do anything into Casio. But he is now there and he looks feisty.
Another battle brewing is the battle for second. Flores has caught Clayton. He's within a second.
Yes, indeed. The last lap, he was 4/10 faster yet again compared to Clayton. Once again showing in the early part of this stint that he is the faster man on fresh tires.
So a little bit left to be decided in these closing 7 laps. We haven't seen a driver slip up recently. I hope none of them are running into a mode of complacency, which we do tend to see from time to time, unfortunately, on iRacing, where everyone's thinking, okay, this is my position, I don't need to fight for it anymore, and they slip into a mistake, much like what Senna did in 1988 at Monaco. Still, as we mentioned, about 10 minutes of racing left. Even though the checkered flag doesn't seem that far away, a lot can happen in 10 minutes.
A whole lot can happen in 10 minutes, yes indeed. And it really does seem like that we will have a big clash. Hopefully not a crash, but a clash for P10 and P2 respectively. And both drivers, Flores and Michael, are looking very hard to see where is the guy in front slower than I am, where can I force him into a mistake, and where can I outbrake him or out-accelerate him.
Battle for second breaks up a little bit.
As we're here with P10, and Michael, he's getting close, but I think he's not running enough wing to be able to compensate for the draft that he loses in there. A lot of downforce, obviously, and I don't think, just looking at how his car behaves when being close behind Henkel, that he has enough downforce on his car.
And Overbay currently running back in 11th place. I'm sure he would have preferred a bit of a cleaner race, because let's not forget, he's one of the drivers who has shown up at both races so far this season and putting on fairly decent performances. He currently holds 7th place in the standings after the opening 2 rounds. Let's do a quick rundown of how our top 5 in the championship are doing. Clayton McLeod obviously came in as our points leader. We'll probably keep that, in fact even extend it with a 2nd place finish today. Adam Tromlewski was 2nd in the points centering today. He's obviously going to drop back, not being here. Ian Ash 3rd in the points. He'll probably stay up there, running 6th place right now. Alejandro Del Campo came into this race 4th in the points. Well, obviously he's going to drop back a bit, being ranked 17th after an early crash. And Tommy Unhola came into this race 5th in the points. He'll probably move up a spot or 2, currently running 4th.
And I have to say again, Flores, same problem as in the first stint. He is suddenly losing a bunch of pace on himself, and Clayton has seen that and opened up the gap already by quite a bit, being 1/10 faster in the last lap. But now the last 3 laps already always 1/10 faster than Flores and opening up that gap. So once again, Flores having the same issues as in his first stint, just using up too much tire in the first few laps of his stint.
There's 4 laps of racing left to go for our race leader, Joseph Fabian, here at Suzuka. Next week we will be at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps over in Belgium. Definitely one of the more popular venues for these drivers. I'll tell you what though, Clayton McLeod did not get through Casio very well that time. That allowed Flores to run him back down. We will keep an eye on those guys running 2nd and 3rd place. With 3 laps left to go, it might not be over just yet.
No, Clayton certainly is not allowed to let up or make a thing happen there, because if... Oh, as we speak about it!
Our championship leader goes around. Flores bounces over the gravel. He has to fight to keep control of the car himself. He's able to do that. So they switch positions, but it could have been worse for either of those 2 drivers. And that will essentially, I think, resolve that battle.
As we go on the replay, you will be able to see that taking on that last left-hander. Clayton just took on way too much curb there as he's riding now up the S's. And here it comes, just taking too much curb and spinning around the car. And Flores taking the safe route around into the gravel as we're back alive again. And suddenly Flores has quite a big gap to Clayton.
Yeah, and simultaneously, at the same time, actually, Henkel had a bit of a mistake that did cost him that 10th place to Michael Overbay. Wasn't as dramatic as what we were watching there for 2nd place. But nice for Flores, maybe not even to necessarily apply the pressure, although I'm sure that had a bit to do with Clayton's mistake, but just to race close enough to Clayton so that when the number 1 did make an error, he was able to, granted not as cleanly as he would have liked, but navigate around him and take 2nd position. Gabe Wood in trouble, he just put a few wheels off, able to recover it, but he continues in 7th place, just a bit of a slide through spoon.
Yes, and once again this track shows that you're not allowed to take your mind off it for even a second unless you're in the pit straight. But yeah, also the same thing you can say about just looking at how many cars we have left in the lead lap. We have 7 cars left, with Gabriel Wood just being just ahead of
yeah,
wait 1 second, I'm seeing Lechner here in pit lane. What happened?
He had a crash. He had been running in 9th position. He just spun off into the wall. And that, unfortunately, is going to bring an end to his day just a couple of laps before the end.
Yes, I just saw it on my own replay. He coming out of Degner 2. We all know this very annoying curb that is there. He bottomed out on it and just spun the rear wheels around, sending him into the wall very heavily, and his day is gone.
When we're saying about 10 minutes ago, Stefan, a lot can happen in 10 minutes.
Yes, and it shows right here. 3 crashes, sadly for those guys, ending 2 battles and 1 race. It just once again shows this track is a force to reckon with.
And Joseph Fabian showing today that he's going to be a force to reckon with. He might even make it just 6 cars left on the lead lap at the end of this thing, because he can see Gabe Wood through his visor. The last car currently on the lead lap, running in 7th position. I wouldn't be surprised actually if Wood pulls to the side here on the front straight and lets Fabian by. See, this is a way to do it. Get it done early on in the front straight so that lap car doesn't run into... Wood's being a bit hard to read for Fabian there.
A little bit there, yes, as we are also on the last lap. So maybe Gabriel is not wanting to be a lap down and finish this on the lead lap.
Or maybe it could be a bit of the opposite. Fabian's just not risking trying to pass him. I mean, he's got a 35-second lead. Either way, just ride it out as long as he doesn't get involved with anything here on this final lap. Looks like Joseph Fabian is going to come home with his first win of the season. A few moments ago, we were talking about the point standings. Fabian currently sits 8th in the points entering this race. As sorry, there was just a change for 5th place. Jacob had an off and Ian Ash went by, but we'll go back up front. Joseph Fabian, because he's only a few turns away from victory now. Obviously, the win here today is going to move him up into the top 5 in the points. But even more importantly, I think when you start taking the drop weeks into account later on during the season, you'll find that Fabian, if he can keep up these finishes, him and Clayton McLeod, and perhaps a couple other drivers, we'll have to wait and see, we'll put on it. Well, you get by Wood here. Yeah, we'll put on a very good championship throughout the season. Joseph Fabian wins the Suzuka.
Yes, very dominant performance by Joseph here, just leaving no one in question but him for the race win.
And Bishar, he still can't afford to slip up himself here, running second as they come towards the line. This is his first showing of a championship. Who knows, perhaps he could be a championship friend later on this year. He's going to come home in second place ahead of our championship leader. He's only missed 2 races. You get 4 drop weeks. Watch out for the driver of this number 41 as he takes second.
Yes, indeed. Flores showed great racing here, great patience, and taking on Clayton and coming away with second place as Tommy Unhola is on the pit straight and crosses the finish line for P4.
Solid performance by Unhola. Ian Ash also making his way up to Casio. Gonna come home with his 3rd consecutive top 5 finish. Didn't look like he would actually at a couple of points during this race, considering a spin early on. But boy, today it was tricky out there at Suzuka, Stefan. And survival was the story. It wasn't necessarily whether you made a mistake, but how costly was your mistake.
Yes, with Unhola being or you could actually say Clayton McLeod being the first car who made a mistake and still finishing 3rd. So it was really how big is your mistake and can you minimize the damage it caused.
The driver was able to minimize it the least, but also driver fastest was our race winner, Joseph Fabian. And we're going to take a quick break here on the Global SimRacing Channel. We will be back with a full race rundown and driver interviews here. Don't go away. Back to Suzuka, where we just witnessed round 3 of a batteries not included championship here with Williams F1 cars racing around the famous Japanese Grand Prix course. And when it was all said and done, it was Joseph Fabian taking home his first victory of the season by over 30 seconds over debutant Floris Bichard, who was able to hold on ahead of Clayton McLeod after McLeod had his spin late on in the going there. Tommy Unhola comes home in 4th place ahead of Ian Nash, rounding up the top 5. Last car on the lead lap was Jacob Castlewicks, back down in 6th place, and then Gabe Wood lost his lead lap status in the very final turn after a bit of a mistake. It looked like, finishing 7th, a lap down. Robert Grosser finishes in 8th position ahead of Michael Overbay and Stefan Hill.
Clemens Moll just finishing outside of the top 10. Alongside him in 12th finished Silvio Hirt. Daniel Lerchner, already the first car who retired in 13th. Antonio Ortiz Poveda, Larry Krupp, Antonio Lima, Alejandro De Campo, Christoph Bussi, Kevin Mills, Dave Peters, Jerry Forkop, Reed Miller, and Taylor Rain are also all retired. That's 10 cars in total who have retired, 11 cars in total who have retired of this race.
And all of them are in a rush to get here into the broadcast booth for a post-race interview. I'll let a few of them down now by saying we won't have time to talk to all of them. We definitely do have time to talk to our race winner, though. Let's bring Joseph Fabian in here. All right, Joseph Fabian, your internet connection was a lot better this race, and your race performance was absolutely staggering out there. Congratulations on your victory.
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't quite sure whether I thought my internet might have been better, but it's good to hear that it actually was. Yeah, after missing last week, unfortunately, last minute I had to pull out of last week's race, so I really needed to get a solid result, and I've had a terrible week with issues actually with my vision. So in order to actually make this race was a real push, and all through it I was not sure whether I'd make it to the end, but I did, and luckily I kept it clean and had the pace to get the win.
I've got to confess, knowing that Clayton McLeod's success here in this series, when you were just pulling away from him at the start of a race, I was like, oh, well, here we go then. This shows us Fabian's on a light fuel load and Clayton's on a heavy fuel load. But that wasn't necessarily the case at all. You were doing that all on pace. Is Suzuka a special track for you?
I wouldn't say it's special. It's what I've raced it before, so it was one that I sort of knew what I needed to do. I think at the start there, I really knowing that I was potentially going to have some issues. I've been running about 2 to 3 laps a day since Wednesday, just trying to keep my eye functional. And so it was really unknown what would happen come later in the race. So I knew I needed a bit of breathing space. And I mean, I know my lap times just in the practice session were a lot faster. So I think whether it was the track, I mean, I've had some massive trouble this week with the track state. Once the rubber gets down on the track, I seem to lose a lot of pace. So I was just really focusing on, hitting the right lines and getting everything right. And I think I maintained for the first half of that stint until I started hitting lap traffic. I think I was able to really get consistent lap times and pull away, and also helped, I think, that the people behind were maybe in a bit of a battle.
All right, well, next week we go to Spa-Francorchamps. Is work going to keep you out of that race too, or do you anticipate being there?
No, I definitely expect to be there. I think, hopefully I'll have half a week to recover and then maybe start testing a little bit late for this week, just because I don't want to push myself too much, but I'm pretty confident next week should be a very fun race. It's definitely in this car, specifically in this car, this track is amazing. So
all right, well, thanks for coming to talk to us, Joseph. Congrats on your race victory. We look forward to seeing you back.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
All right, so that was our race winner, Joseph Fabian. 1 position behind him. Stefan, you have caught up with our second place finisher.
Yes, I've caught up with Floris Bichard and finishing in second being all race long behind Clayton. Flores, how did it feel for you being stuck behind Clayton for so long?
Well, I was seeing red, Ferrari red all the time. But no, I was kind of annoyed I had to brake a little earlier than I'm used to for the bus stop. But it was good fun, especially when he pulled that move going into the bus stop to try and throw me off, and he kind of did. But yeah, that was a good fun. I was actually much more on pace than I thought it would be compared to what I was seeing from previous broadcasts. So I'm actually well happy with that result. I had a good start as well, so yeah, that was a good race. I liked it. It's been a while since I raced this. So.
Yeah, well, you showed a great load of pace in the first part of your stint, but then always dropped off a little bit. Were you just heavy on the tires, or what happened there? Why did you drop off so much time after the first part of your stint?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not as in shape as I used to be, and I got a little tired. Also, doesn't help that for fun, I put the force feedback in his car up a lot when I do laps around the Nürburgring, and yeah, forgot to lower that.
Well, Flores, at the end of this interview, is there anyone you want to thank out there that makes it happen for you here at Suzuka?
Yeah, I want to thank Clayton McLeod for making this happen. This series is pretty awesome, so I'm happy this car's back, and I'm also happy we failed to hit each other multiple times. So, good racing. I liked it.
Yeah, well, everyone, that was Flores right there, our second place finisher of today, and if I heard it correctly, Sam is catching up with Clayton McLeod, our third place finisher.
Yeah, Clayton, third place, but the most key word there I've got to imagine is finisher. How scary was that when you spun out with Bishar right behind you?
Well, I was just happy that I kept it off the wall, and that the path that he took to avoid me also kept him going. I had been gaining some time in those S's throughout the race compared to practice, and but as a consequence, I was using a bit more fuel. I was just able to balance on the throttle through there a little better in the race than I did in practice all week, and I ended up using so much fuel that I had to save for about 3 laps there after I pitted.
Yeah, I've got to confess, in the early stages of a race, Fabian and Bishar really seemed to be hooked up, and you seemed to be a little bit off a pace. And I was thinking to myself, well, here we go again. McLeod is doing a heavy fuel strategy again. That wasn't the case, though. They did seem to have a bit of a pace advantage over you, particularly in the short run. It looks like you got a good championship fight there, hold off throughout this season.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I'm looking forward to Spa next week. It should be a good one too.
All right, well, as the other drivers have been mentioning, Clayton, we're very appreciative of you for putting on the series. I know third place is probably not what you wanted to bring home today, but another consistent finish, and we look forward to seeing you all back next week here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good one, guys.
All right, short and sweet interview with Clayton, and we want to give a message out to all the drivers who are lined up outside of our interview booth right now here who are watching on GSRC. Thanks for stopping by. Unfortunately, though, it looks like we're hitting our time limit here. We got a Camel GT Championship coming up on the Global SimRacing Channel in just a few moments, so we hope you'll all tune in for that. And we're very thankful, though, that all of these drivers come here to put on a great show every week. And also Clayton McLeod, we're very grateful that he's able to organise this week in, week out, and put on this show for us. So we hope to see you all back next week at Spa for round 4 of the Batteries Not Included Championship. Here on screen, we have listed all the companies that help make this possible. They bring all the software and hardware for our broadcasts. Additional thanks, of course, to Eric Outcombe and June Lalonde. They give us our music, and if you see on the screen there, you'll see how to get hold of them and to check out more of their great work. Thanks to the team today, Stefan, Sean and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, you can find us at globalsimracingchannel.com. We're also on social media. We're on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at facebook.com/globalsimracingchannel, and Instagram at GSRC_ground. All of the upcoming races for our other series, we are listing those on screen for you right now, so check those out, mark them down on your calendar, and don't miss another second of exciting racing action. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.